Welcome to the Church Digital Podcast. Through this podcast, we'll talk about the technological innovations within the church. But more than tech for tech itself, we'll address deeper questions. Is disciple making possible digitally? How should we approach the digital mission field? Can a biblically grounded church operate in digital space? Oh, and where does the metaverse fit into all this? Whether you're a big or small church, an established church, or a startup church plant, the Church Digital's goal is to help churches like yours learn to be a multiplying church, digitally and physically. Our heart, that churches like yours would discover a newfound focus on disciple making that will revolutionize your church. And now, here's your host, Jeff Reed.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to the Church Digital Podcast, Twitch edition. Hey, we're in season 4 here of the Church Digital Podcast, diving into Jesus, gamers, and church. And so we're doing this podcast, but with season 4 here, we've been doing the podcast live on Twitch. It's Thursday. I don't even know what today is, the 23rd, 3 p.m. Eastern. And so we're hanging out on Twitch. We've got some people kind of hanging out on Twitch. And so we've been doing this season, I don't know, for a month or so, digging in, different conversations. And we've had some Twitch streamers, we've talked esports, we talked digital missionaries, with some really interesting topics, family streaming, like some really interesting topics, and talking about how God is moving in gaming and what it looks like to be a church in these gaming communities. So you can go back and check out the rest of season 4 if you're watching online or on YouTube. theChurch.digital/podcast will get you to that. You can subscribe to the podcast or youtube.com, theChurch.digital, of course. But then we are streaming this Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. And so if you're hanging out on Monday listening to this on demand, and it's like, oh, I like Twitch, or, oh, I don't even know how to spell Twitch. Create an account, get a feel for what Twitch and some of the culture and community looks like here, because it's a lot of fun. And what you'll discover is that I'll call out the U.S. church specifically on this one, but probably the church in general, we're not doing a really good job connecting with gamers and nerds in this crowd. And maybe we need to start to think outside the box and what ministry looks like and take some notes here. Phantom Mythos. Twitch, I think I've heard of that before. That's awesome. Hey, so listen, I am really excited about today's conversation. I typically, I'm a bleeding edge guy. I like thinking outside of the box. I like doing something different. I love change. I'm the guy that's going to wash up on a deserted island with the machete and just start hacking away at palm trees, paving the way. But when I find somebody that's even more aggressive and more bleeding edge than I am, oh man, that's when it gets really fun. And so we're going to bring into the conversation DJ Soto from VRMMO Church and Pastor Koko as well. And so magic magician behind the wall, bring him in. Hey, there you go. Koko, DJ. Hey, thanks for jumping on the podcast here into this conversation.
Hey, thanks for having us. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for the invite.
So here's. Oh, listen, I'm so looking forward to this. And I was talking off air, DJ. I don't think we've had a conversation in 23. It's been probably 6 months or so. You and I are running in different directions all the time.
Keeping busy.
And Koko, I don't think we've touched base maybe in a year. I remember doing something with you with Leadership Network a while back, a panel. But I'm really looking forward to digging in here. Yeah. So here's what we're going to talk about, and I'm explaining this to the audience as well as to the guests here. I really want to focus on the idea of church in some of these games. Like we've talked about doing church in Twitch, being a digital missionary, using Twitch. We've brought Jate Earhart in. We've brought Aki. We've had conversations with Mark about Lux Digital Church and Bubba from Love Thy Nerd. And so we've talked very peripherally, if that's the right way to say that, about engaging within gaming culture. But what you guys are doing through VRMMO Church is more specifically doing church in these video games. Like Pastor Koko, you are for I started to say Black Desert Online. I know it's Final Fantasy. And so like you're literally doing church inside Final Fantasy. This is crazy. Like, could you just maybe open up here a little bit and tell us a little bit about what church looks like in the video game Final Fantasy?
Yeah. So it differs depending on what game you're in, because you don't want to just lift and shift, of course, physical into digital space. You want to take advantage of what's going on in the space. So Final Fantasy 14 is the one that I'm in. It's an MMO. And we have every other Saturday a gathering at our FC house, our free company house, which is like your guild. And we will just have a discussion. It's more of a discussion than it is like a sermon. We can't do music in there, so there's no music, but we just have a discussion and go through the Bible really in depth, very in depth. We're going more so than what you would normally expect on a Sunday. And we're just digging into scripture, clicking hyperlinks to other, hyperlinks is a term from Bible Project, if you haven't heard of them.
Sure.
But, and just digging into scripture and having discussions about it and asking challenging questions is like, how do we apply this to our lives and stuff? And we'll hang out. As far as the community goes, we play together every Friday night, and throughout the week, whenever any one of us is online, if we want to do content together, we play together. So it's kind of like doing our life together inside the game and on voice through Discord, because there's no like in-game voice. So we meet in Discord through voice while we're playing in the game. So it depends on the game how you can do that. But
sure. DJ, like what other, so obviously we're in Final Fantasy. What other games are you actively in? What games were you experimenting with? Like, give me some backstory and history here on actually doing church inside these video games.
Yeah. So, what we're known for mainly is churches in virtual reality. And then we've been church planning in MMOs as of recent. That's part of a new part of VR Church. And our name's kind of evolved unofficially to VRMMO Church. So we're planning churches in virtual reality experiences, the metaverse, and we're also planning churches in massively multiplayer online experiences. And I'm particularly drawn to MMOs, and Koko is, the team is, because there's some unique particularities when it comes to MMOs. So it's not that you couldn't maybe create a community around like Fortnite, but let's say you're playing a quick Fortnite game, you jump in there with 100 players or so, but that's just for 10 minutes, and then you're out. So there is a massively multiplayer element to that, but it's only for a very limited time. A lot of these MMOs, for people who don't know, because I get the question a lot, what is an MMO, are these experiences that are persistent, like the sun rises and sets, there's an economy, there's communities, there's clans, there's guilds, there's all these different characteristics. And there's maybe debate about what is an MMO, what is not. But ultimately, one of the elements is that it always exists. It always is there. So Pastor Koko was talking about the Guild House. So that's currently active online. It didn't go away like a Fortnite experience would. That is currently there. Players could go actually walk up to the house, look at the guest book, read about what church is like, or sign it at least. I'm not sure if there's a descriptor there. I can't remember. Koko, you can maybe remind me about that. But
there's a short description.
Yeah, short description. And you can walk through the house and kind of check things out. And that's where they gather for church. And it's really beautiful there. So really, VR, the metaverses and MMOs have a lot of similarities. A lot of these MMOs, if they adopted VR, would be considered a metaverse to some degree. So there's a lot of similarities. And oftentimes, these MMOs are more robust in community building than, say, the VR metaverses are. So anyways, that whole vibe or that whole realm of virtual reality, metaverse, persistent universes, that all is attractional to us as church planners, what we do. So we would love to be everywhere because we just have such a passion for it. It's just, human power, time, energy, and money to get into these spaces. But right now, we have churches in the VR side, Rec Room, and VR Chat, and those could be considered gamer churches, if you will. There's definitely gamer elements to those things. Those on the VR side. And in the MMO side, we have churches in Final Fantasy 14 Online, which Pastor Koko leads, and as well as Rust, which is a very unique experience, survival, MMO type of world where we build a church. It's a persistent sunrises, sunsets. There's an economy. It's kind of more of your gritty, maybe post-apocalyptic experience. But ultimately, like when you boil all this down, because I know I'm talking about all the platforms, but when you boil it down, there's communities that exist online and very compelling, robust communities, and with deep relationships and deep connections. And those platforms that, for lack of better words, like are screaming, we build community here really well, we're attracted to go plant a church there. So Final Fantasy, I was a Warcraft player back in the day. By the way, would love to do a church of Warcraft if we had time, energy, money, all that type of stuff. There's so many places we could go. You mentioned Black Desert Online, so you know about that. That's a big one as well. But I remember reading about an in-game wake for a player that had passed away. And I saw this community just kind of like get together and come around this like tragic event, very symbolically in game with umbrellas, walking in a line. And I was so captivated by the community elements of that. And I was like, oh, I think that'd be a perfect place to plant a church. And things with Rust were attractional to us as well. So those are anyways, to boil it down, those are our four main experiences. We would love to be everywhere. The opportunity is ripe to go other places. So people are listening, and you got communities in Warcraft or Black Desert Online. Man, it is just ripe for opportunities. So, anyways, I could go all day. I better stop and let you ask questions because I could just keep going.
So good. I do want to parallel. I want to talk about VR and gaming and how the similarities and differences, because I'm in the middle of some of those conversations even now, trying to wrestle with that. But we'll get there. Hold off on the VR stuff for a little bit. Koko, talk to me a little bit. I mean, you're trying to launch these games we're in games that are community centric. My 14-year-old daughter is obsessed with Final Fantasy, and so I understand the community that's surrounding that space. What does and so you're talking about Bible studies or studying the Word and going deep into that. Like, how is the church really taking advantage of maybe some of the community features within the game? Like, are you? I love the idea. I forget, what did you say? What was the phrase? Because it wasn't like copy and paste. When you were like, you don't want to just do the physical thing.
You can't lift and shift.
Lift and shift. I've never heard that before.
Okay. That's a good one. Someone tweet that.
That's lift and shift. You never want to lift and shift.
Yeah.
But so like drill in a little bit. Let's get dirty here. Maybe some practical stuff. Like how are you the church in Final Fantasy?
So we're using the tools that Final Fantasy provides. They provide a cross-world link shell is what is their in-game chat that lets you, that's like set up specifically for a group. So you can invite people to that chat channel and it goes across different world servers. So I'm in one on North America called Siren, and then I can talk to someone else on another server that is also in North America. But so we use that, and there's also the concept of the guild, the free company. So we have a few members who are active in our free company, but we're not limited to just our servers. So we have people that attend and hang out across multiple servers that we can hang out together regardless of what server we're on. That's the way Final Fantasy is set up. And so we will use that cross.
Let me ask this.
Go ahead.
Do people come to your guild like looking for MMO Church? Are you missional in inviting people into the guild or into the church? Maybe what is evangelism or some of that front door? What does that look like through what you're doing in Final Fantasy?
We have to be careful with the game's rules, terms of service. Because think about it like if you were going to be a missionary in another country, you would want to respect that country's rules and laws so that you don't get kicked out or arrested or anything, because you can't do anything if you're kicked out. So we respect those terms of service. And so we have to be careful in how we communicate stuff. So we use outside means to communicate, hey, we're in Final Fantasy, like social media. We use YouTube, we use TikTok, we promote that way, because in game they don't want you There are certain laws or rules around like religious activity and stuff. So we want to respect that because they're trying to like keep the griefers out, right? So as far as like you have to be careful because there's this risk of people coming into Final Fantasy just to, and this is what they're afraid of, yelling out to everyone, you're going to hell, repent, right? We don't want that.
Sure.
And so they've got the terms of service in place to protect the community from that. And we want to, abide by that. And so we've got Discord, We've got TikTok, YouTube, and then we have our free company and our that you can find through the community website. Final Fantasy has a community website, so you can go looking for free companies to join, and we've got our info in there. So it's outside to bring in mostly.
Very cool. So tell me a little bit. Talk to me about one of the things that I've learned digitally is different platforms, different communities have a different target audience. There are people outside of that audience, but as a general rule, there's a type of person that's within that space. What's the target audience? Who's the persona, the average person that you're connecting with in the Final Fantasy world/church?
So there's different types of people that play Final Fantasy. There are the people that are just checking it out to see, if they like it, and they'll play very casually. The people that we usually get are the ones who are like in it. They see Final Fantasy as their community. They're coming there for friendships. They're coming there for that relationship because it's something that they can't get out in the real world, or it's different in the real world. And so that is their community. Like, for example, there's a certain streamer who is on Twitch that she's from the Ukraine, and she had to leave Ukraine. And so the community, the Final Fantasy community, watched her life, watched her evacuating. They watched her have to move to another country and get back set up again. And they were with her throughout that whole thing. And there have been like the community hangs out with people because there's like been gamers in Ukraine who have been hanging out with their friends online while they're being bombed in their bomb shelter. So this is the type of community that Final Fantasy is. And these are the types of people that we want to be a part, the ones that are there to live, right? To be a part of that relationship.
Sure. Very cool. Is and maybe DJ on your side, like how much of lift and shift are you even doing among like Final Fantasy and Rust? Are there different rules in you were mentioning terms of services, terms of conditions, like does it change greatly between the two video games as you're looking even at like World of Warcraft? Are you having to reinvent more than replicate? Like what is the idea of multiplying this out among different worlds? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great point that Koko made about lift and shift. So for Rust, they are it's known to be more of a toxic environment just because it's a brutal, kill or be killed type of experience, a video game. And so the rules don't really apply like they would in Final Fantasy because I think it's just kind of everything goes for the most part. There are some basic things about hate, and I'm sure that probably could be connected to religious hate depending on how it's expressed. But we find it to be a lot more relaxed on the Rust side of things. And so fundamentally, like when we look at these different communities, and I know this sounds kind of like weird, and it's not meant to, but the platform tells us what it wants it to be. Like this is how church should be in here. So for us to, and what we did in early VR church days, is try to replicate the church. And really that created a lot of pain points. When we realized that we were supposed to reimagine and not replicate. And so as we learned that lesson through VR Church and really grown by leaps and bounds as a ministry, that mindset was already in place when we came to Final Fantasy, when we came into Rust, where we weren't trying to replicate, we were going to reimagine. And so as we church planted, we took we looked at it through the eyes of the strengths of the platform. Like Koko was talking about the link shell, I forgot the guild's name, but the fellowships and the free companies. And so for Rust, it has its own version of things that are attractional to those types of players. And we'll get a lot of like reaction online, like TikTok. People are like, you have a church in Rust? That's crazy. And we've had a lot of people come and visit. And what you're hearing about kind of like the bird's eye view of the experience, but really when you get down to the nitty gritty, like, I just keep it generic because, some of these are like pastoral conversations, but I've seen Koko, one-on-one with people who are part of her community and shepherding them and joining a VC late at night to be with them with whatever they're going through. So that avenue of ministry, perhaps there was people that would eye roll at it, but it's opened up unique opportunities for people who might not otherwise have been ministered to, or who otherwise might not have attended a church. And we've seen that in Rust. A guy came in to our experience in Rust and wanted prayer because of his wife was going to lose her baby, or something was going on with pregnancy complications. We didn't see him for like 8-9 months. And then he popped in our Discord and he said, guys, baby's doing well. Thank you so much for praying. I remember going into the church in Rust and praying. So those examples of like Pastor Koko ministering, the gentleman who came into our Rust church, and many more are, I think if people are adverse to gamer church, if you will, they're really missing out on unique opportunities to connect, to minister, to encourage, where many of these individuals would not have stepped foot into a physical church at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning. And that's not anti-physical church Sunday 9 a.m. I think that's great, and that can be great for who it is for. But for millions, they're going to be in Final Fantasy, they're going to be in Rust, and there is power there in creating these experiences in churches. And they are churches. That's one value that we've learned early on, is that church in Rust, church in Final Fantasy is no different than the church in the corner here in town. And that mindset really has empowered us to minister, where otherwise I think we'd have been limited and not have had the impact and the outreach if we had a limited mindset. But to approach it as this is real, just like anything else, has set the foundation for us as a church here into the future.
Yeah. And so because it's a real church, because there's expectations for the Spirit to move, because you're trying to create an ecclesiologically stable church, you're following after what the Bible calls us to. You're and especially in gaming environments, you're dealing with a lot of messy situations, I would imagine, Koko. You've got, I'm just even thinking pastoral care, mental health issues, counseling issues, and even beyond, hey, my baby's sick, just like, even personal issues that people are going through. Forgive me, I don't spend much time in Final Fantasy at a personal level, but like I said, my daughter does. It's text-based communication in Final Fantasy, right? Or is it voice?
Yeah, it's text.
It's text. So how is it pastorally counseling people, diving into deep issues, getting into the mud and the dirt of people's lives, all with a keyboard? Like, what does that look like? Is that difficult? Is that frustrating? What does that experience look like?
Those kinds of conversations do happen in the chat, but that's more rare. More often, it's in Discord.
Okay.
So Discord voice.
So you're
Discord chat, DMs, direct messages.
Talk to me a little bit here. Unpack the relationship between the Final Fantasy and Discord. Like, what do you do in Final Fantasy? At what point do you try to connect them to Discord? What do you do in Discord? What does that process look like?
So lately, our new people that have been coming in through Discord, and then we'll meet in game. That's because they're coming in through Discord, through social media, like they're finding out about it some way. Somebody's telling them, or they're seeing something. And I'm terrible at marketing, so I need to do a better job of asking people how they found out about us, but I'm not doing that. But so that's mostly how it happens lately, is they're coming in through Discord, and then we're meeting in game. And then word of mouth in game. will bring more people, like other, because it's not just our FC. We've actually started aligning with other FCs to Free Company Guild to like do stuff together. So then their FC will come check out the church service sometime. So, and we'll do stuff together. So the Discord is where we do our like deep conversations most of the time. We get in voice. Our church service is we'll meet in the game with our avatars, and then I'll have Discord voice going where people will just come into the Discord voice and listen, and then they can either speak or they can type. So it's their option of, because some people don't want to be on voice and they'll type, but listen with voice. And we just give them the freedom of whatever they're comfortable with, and don't try to force them to do something they're not. So,
yeah.
And then
I'll be honest,
stream on
I had
Twitch.
no idea you had. Okay. I'm sorry. I had no idea you flipped the book. You flipped the script where you were recruiting people from Discord. Like, what are you like? If people search for Final Fantasy on Discord, you're one of the servers that pop up and people get connected to you that way?
No, it's through social media, really, through like, because we can't, we want to avoid, so we want to avoid like promoting ourselves loudly inside the game because we don't want to get banned. So it's outside social media, word of mouth. And then sometimes there will be people in Discord joining for VR Church, and then they'll look at the channels and they'll say, "Oh, I didn't know you played Final Fantasy," and then they'll come join Final Fantasy if it's something they play. So it's
and
more
so you were
organic.
saying you stream. Go ahead, DJ.
I was about to say there is kind of a network effect there. Like as people come into the VRMMO Church experience, they like, oh, these are different ways that you can experience church, whether it's Rust, FF14, VR. So there's kind of like a network effect. And some people have crossed over, I mean, like, I was doing VR, but let me commit to the MMO Church experience, and, vice versa. And so there's kind of like this community that's being cultivated. Koko mentioned social media, and I think there's a powerful kind of, network effect there too, because of TikTok, YouTube. People are like, what? There's a church in Final Fantasy? And so I noticed, at least in Rust, and I'm not sure if FF14 has the same network effect, but that seed planted early in social media experience will bear fruit later. Like you'll see people come, like I heard about this like 2 months ago, I'm here now. So there's like some time between that first interaction to when they start to experience or visit. I know people like to watch the Final Fantasy 14 sermons and discussions, if you will. And I just think they find it very unique. And it's a really a very unique service. Like all of them are. Rec Room, VR Chat, we used to be in Altspace. Rust is just super unique. And Final Fantasy 14 it's a very beautiful service. You go in, the decorations are just, immaculate. Koko says no like worship music per se, but there's like an ambiance of music. And so the whole vibe or the aesthetics are so just calming and inviting. And then just to go in there with other avatars that, we're all dressed up, and because Final Fantasy is known for its wardrobe. That's like one of the major elements of Final Fantasy 14. And so going in there, saving everyone dressed up, we grab a seat. There's creatures because we have pets. They're all running around, and Coco's delivering the message. We're doing discussion. Mm-hmm. People are doing emojis, like, pumping their fists, giving thumbs up, and so, it's very unique and special, and something that should definitely be experienced.
Very cool. Yeah. Is the spiritual temperature, are they spiritually seeking? Are they cold to Christ and coming in to make a joke? Are they already Christian and just wanting to check out this unique thing? Like, spiritually, how are people when they first come into to Final Fantasy Church?
So I have a mix. Some of them already Christian, and they're just coming in because they have a life in Final Fantasy. And so why not join a community of Christians in there? So we do have that. And then we also have Christians who can't find a local church because they're having a really hard time finding a good local church that they can get involved in. And so I actually have people from that group. And then there are people who were in a long time ago in church, but left. And then they'll come and just listen and hang out and not say anything, but they'll listen. And then we have, it's mostly right now Christians. We do have, but they're like Christians who have kind of not been involved in local church.
Interesting.
So we're able to reach people that haven't been able to find good local churches, or that they've kind of like stepped away from those local churches, or walked away a long time ago and are coming to like maybe rediscover. So I'm not really setting a true target audience, except I want to reach the people that think that this is they come to Final Fantasy for community. They come to Final Fantasy to have relationship. Those are the people, regardless of whether they're Christian or not. Because that's what I'm looking for.
Now, as I remember, you all have been around 12 months, 18 months. How long has Final Fantasy been open? The church?
We've unofficially since 2020, but
oh wow, okay.
We officially
longer
launched.
Than I remember.
Well, did we officially launch last year or the year before? I've lost track.
Oh man, my time frames are awful. I don't remember. It's been a couple. It's almost 2 years.
I think maybe officially launched in January of last year. Maybe.
Okay.
So, I mean, you may not have the answer to this yet figured out. When I ask this question, most people don't have it figured out. Like, is the end game to keep them in Final Fantasy Church? Is the end game to help them get connected into a physical church, or to grow them to VR church, like in Rec Room or something? Like, what's the long-term spiritual development? I get that question all the time. And so that's the biggest question people ask.
I don't care about whether or not they go to a physical church. What I care about is whether or not they're growing in Christ. So that's my goal, is to get them in a relationship with Christ and get them to know the real Christ and the real God, not the one that they've been shown by hateful Christians that push them away from church in the physical world. And I could go on about that. But my goal is to help them grow. That's my goal.
Yeah, we all can go on about that. So.
I love that. Yeah, Endgame was interesting because we've kind of been having conversations because there's a lot of evolution happening with VRMMO Church, and one of them is being more genre based. So, and this is like early conversations. We haven't declared or been definitive with this, but like with Rust, there's going to be a shelf life to that at some point, whether it's 5 years or so. It's gonna come. Rust 2 is going to come out. Arc 2 is coming out. So these different survival experiences. So we're thinking about for lack of better words, rebranding Rust Church into Survival Church because it's a part of the survival genre, and Final Fantasy Church into MMOs, so it's more about like the broader term, so we can shift into whatever is new, whatever comes, down the line. So there's a kind of an evolving branding or terminology that we're kind of experimenting with. And then also, like, what do we do? What's our end goal? Because it's a great question. Are we trying to get them into a physical church? Are we trying to get them into VR church? I think what Koko's answer has said just hits it on the nail. That's our focus. That's our goal. Someone asked me recently about, are you trying to get them into a physical church? And I was like, well, and I told him early on in the interview that we view ourselves as a church. I said, well, we view ourselves as a church. And if they want to get connected physically, certainly, let me help you do that. But that's not necessarily our goal because that's what we are.
Yeah.
That's
as long
great.
as they're growing. If they're not growing in a physical church, which many don't, I'd rather see them grow. And we have met each other in real life. It's like I've met just recently one of my Final Fantasy people in real life because they were driving through on their way somewhere else. And so we're still able to connect in the real life when we can, but it's that relationship.
Unpack that for me. That's interesting. So video game, digital goes physical. Video game, somebody's driving through, stops by, coffee, lunch, whatever house. Was it weird? Was it awkward? Was it like you've known each other forever? Was it different than a digital? Like I would like to know what that interaction was like.
It was weird, but good. It's like I enjoyed meeting them in person, getting to know them better, because there are things that you talk about in game that you're not going to talk about in real life and vice versa. So just getting to know, it was actually 2 people that came through, and we met for lunch. And it's like, I've always associated them with their avatar. So what, you mean you're not a dragon girl in real life? What? So you look completely different. That's right. So it's just that weird, your brain associating because we identify people by how they look, right? I know DJ because his face, that's DJ. And you by your face, you're Jeff. So whenever you're all digital and only ever see people's avatars, that's how you identify them. And then so making that mental connection is weird in real life.
It's so good. It's interesting. There's been several digital ministries. I'm even thinking Jason Poling up at Cornerstone. He's at Cornerstone Yuba City, but they do VR. Like they've had a physical meetup for the digital church where they're a virtual reality church where all people fly over from all over the country, all over the world. They fly into San Francisco, I guess, and to Jason's physical church to meet up. And so I love stories when that happens. But it's interesting. Because you're so comfortable in digital space, oftentimes there's some awkwardity. I don't know if that's a word, but some awkwardness in that first physical interaction. I've heard that quite a bit. So very, very cool. DJ, tell me, 100% not a word. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. You know what else is not a word? How I pronounce your last name, Mark. Your name is not pronounced the way that I say it. We're going to just call that out right now. I also true. I have no idea how to pronounce a 4-letter word that I should be able to say easily. Okay, hey, so here's the question I wanted to ask. DJ, so you've been in these 2 worlds, and I'm not calling you out. You're a very aggressive guy, but you've been in these 2 worlds for a while. Have you experimented with other games? Why are you just in these 2? Is it resourcing? Is it people? Is it like what's been the bottleneck for you to get past the 2?
Yeah. So, short answer is we're always experimenting. Since a lot of us are gamers, we're all in and out of all different types of experiences, even if we're just checking it out. We had a very strong, movement towards Black Desert Online early on when we were thinking about MMO Church. And really, I think one of the answers is it does come down to resources and, manpower. Do we have the hours during the week to, maintain a ministry well? Do we have, at least some fundamental finances to, establish at least a central experience so that we could support these ministries in VRMMO churches? So unofficially, it goes through like a little bit of a curation process. Like, is the platform good? Does it cultivate community? Do we have people for it? And so ideally, when it came down to for us at VRMMO Church, our community's passion for Rust and then our community's passion for FF14 really was the kind of like deciding factor. Even though we would love to be in Warcraft, I think there could be an amazing Ark experience with the dinosaurs that you could do on a PvE server. I would love to do that. We were also experimenting with GTA Online, Grand Theft Auto. Would have loved to plan a church in Los Santos. But at the end of the day, we were limited, so to speak, and not necessarily in a bad way, but just in what's good for us to plant the churches where we did. Always keeping an eye on what's new, what's coming. When New World came out, we're eyeing that up. Just as in just a generic evaluation, like what does this have to offer? Is this any good? And so I think at our core, at the heart of our leadership, for the elders of your MMO Church, we're experimenters, we're gamers, and we like to explore. So we're always looking at stuff. And I think there's a lot of wisdom with the team to know what our limits are at. And Koko does a good job of kind of counting the how many energy points we have to do something. And so I think if we had unlimited, resources, manpower, we would be in 3 to 5 experiences by next month. But we're just taking it one step at a time.
No, I totally get that.
It's good to focus on one and build the community in there too, because you could spread yourself too thin and then also not do a good job of building the community and the ones that you do have. And it's something DJ said a very long time ago when I first started meeting with him was, if we can't serve 2 people well, how are we going to serve 20 to 200 people well, right? We need to be able to serve the few that we do have before we start expanding anywhere else.
Good call. If this may be too personal a question to ask, what's the operating budget? Like, how much does it cost to run Final Fantasy Church? I mean, you can set aside salaries, or I don't know how any of that works, but would love some insight.
So there's a couple of ways to look at it, and because it's an evolving conversation about finances in VR Church, because at one point we had a fairly funding element where we could stipend to a certain degree, like teachers and stuff like that. As things have dived off the cliff, economically, for tech companies, they're cutting back. You can imagine if they're having trouble, the Metaverse Gamer Church is certainly having trouble as well, economically. And I'm speaking very generically. So for us, we're really running on like 99% volunteer-driven ministry. So there are no costs associated to it, except actually people are putting money into it. So, like Koko, I'm assuming you're paying for your subscription to, that's something that, one day the church hopes to, cover, as she's the pastor of the experience. So as it looks, I probably had a different answer for you last year. This year, VRMMO Church is going to be a volunteer-driven ministry. So when it comes to how much is it going to, if a leader was going to ask me, how much is it going to cost to plant a church in this gaming thing we're going to do? Our answer would be nothing. Just go do it. But I know maybe sometimes churches want a line item behind that. So, but that's not something that I think we would get, because we've even kind of dialed in our ministry to be volunteer-driven, which I think is very unique. Could be better, could be for worse. It's just what it is at the moment. So,
yeah, there's certainly opportunities to go. We talk a lot about bivocational ministry, where you've got somebody who's got a 9-to-5 job and ministries on the side. They're not getting a salary from it. That actually is a growing trend that we're seeing, especially among new churches and new church planters, where the idea. I mean, listen, we're at borderline recession. There's economy's about to crash. Artificial intelligence has everybody wigging out. What the economy, the business models of tomorrow, donor-based churches are going to struggle. And so there's even conversations among church leaders on how to become multi-stream. And so the more that multi-stream of incomes, and so the more that churches can start to move towards a bivocational, towards a volunteer-driven model, that is going to be so much more effective and so much more. I mean, money's not the lid. In many ways, money becomes the lid. But as you're able to cast vision and recruit more leaders to expand more, like, I love what you're doing. To me, that's the most encouraging thing that I've heard is, yeah, we can do this, and we're doing this with volunteers. We're casting vision and getting them to buy into it. And so I would rather if you had said that than, yeah, we've got like a $2 million budget. That would be discouraging.
Yeah,
I know that's hard, but are you doing it?
Yeah, no, it is. It is hard, and we've had a lot of tough conversations all around that. And I think we're really proud of the team for where we're at right now, because we've created a sustainable rhythm for the foreseeable future. Whereas before, it was really reliant on a particular outcomes and monetary giving. But now that it's dialed in a certain way, VRMMO Church will never go away. It won't close down because of funding. It would always exist. And so I think that's super unique. I think there's a part of it that's uncomfortable, because you do want some good funding, but like you said, the recession, giving is down. If the tech companies are having a problem and they're for profit, can you imagine what nonprofits are going through? Can you imagine what nonprofits are going through? I'm talking about us over here at the bottom end of the pool. We're Gamer Church, Metaverse Church. It's not like people are lining up to, the denominations aren't lining up to give, right? So, no, I think it's hard, but I also think it's beautiful. So it's both. It's bittersweet.
Awesome.
And we've had to make that acknowledgement that we're going to have to get our income somehow, some other way. Like, yeah, I saw your stream on co-vocation versus bivocational with, I don't remember who it was you were talking to, Jeff, but I saw that one and it's like got me thinking about this. Yeah, we're going to have to accept that this is not a staff-driven thing. We're going to have to work outside of the church to get our money.
Yeah. There's and that's a cold reality that even like successful large churches are wrestling with at this point. The ministry model for funding is changing right before our eyes, and the ones that can adapt towards it, and how that works. But the other aspect of bivocational is how to be really, and DCN, like my nonprofit, the church planting organization is. I mean, I'll just be blunt right here. We got a $20,000 grant last year. And then we had donor giving, which was helpful, but it was minimal in the grand scheme of things. And so like, we're not rolling in cash by any stretch. As a matter of fact, I probably have 5 jobs that pay for the ministry of the Church Digital and Digital Church Network and my house and everything. Like, I'm paying a lot out of my pocket. But how to be successful in bivocational, as I talked with planters and pastors who are successful in bivocational, it's not slowed down. It's recruit more leaders and disperse more and break out more and release more responsibility. And so that's really has been the challenge for us as we're running DCN. Is not, there are seasons where I feel like, oh, Jeff just needs to work harder. Yeah, let me go ahead and put in that 80-hour week. But that's not sustainable. That's not helpful. And instead it's been, okay, maybe we need to slow down, but maybe I need to recruit some people, cast vision, train them and release them. And so for me, I love being aggressive. It's been how can I recruit and train and develop apprentice people to release that? Man, this has been a great conversation. Encouraged by what I'm seeing. Hey, DJ, I want to ask one question. And this is weird. So let me set it up. It in my and actually this isn't even me. This came out of Sprout Digital. I think you talked with them, Jared and Ann Roth. They're a research company talking to digital churches and virtual reality churches. One of the few, although it's increasing, really research reports coming out on what's happening in digital only church and metaverse church. And according to them, they came up with 5 different categories of digital churches. Social media churches, influencer churches, virtual reality churches, metaverse churches, combined kind of there. They did gamer church is a new category that just came in. And then the 5th would be a physical church doing digital ministry. So what I'm saying is that they separated VR and gamer church into 2 separate categories. It's interesting. Like, this has been actually a source of contention recently as we've delved more into gamer churches and working more with virtual reality churches, where there's a lot of similarities, there's a lot of differences. And I just wanted to ask the guy that literally is doing a church that is across these 2 categories. Like, do you see them more as similar? Do you see them more separate?
100%.
Like, talk to me a little bit.
Actually, all four of the categories are all the same. You talk about influencer, social media, VR, gaming. You could put all that into one, because that's essentially what we do. If we're, I don't want to use the word if we're doing it well, but that's a great model. Let's just use that language, not being disrespectful to anybody else, but to do it well would to be an influencer on social media who's doing. And then you can combine those gamer and VR, because those are essentially the same. Like, when you look at Altspace or VR Chat, it's basically a game. It's like, let's take VR Chat. That's on Steam. That's considered a game you download. But it's a VR social experience that you could call a metaverse. So those 2 categories, I think, are one. And then as a ministry, we're doing the social media and the influencing, and that's a powerful kind of effect. So to me, it's all one and the same. At least for us and how we express it, it's all one and the same. I wouldn't have separated those, but that's just me, my perspective.
Yeah. I was having a conversations with a global missions organization. We were talking about this, and he was very no, it's one. I was like, no, it's two, and so it was interesting, and it's all new. It was funny. They just came out with a report. Well, it was like November of last year. Like gamer church was not on the radar of anybody of this research in 21. Like it didn't even make the report. And wow. they released an updated on it was more discipleship in 22. What avenues talking discipleship? And that's when they're like, hey, we've discovered this fourth category that's gamers, and which really kind of brought this opportunity of explosion of awareness of what's going on in gamer churches, and what Mark and Bubba and Jate and all these guys are working on, and what you're championing even in your worlds, even in these specific games. Like it's encouraging to me, because as a general rule, we reach different people by doing these different things. And so seeing the success in I keep wanting to say Black Desert. You guys need to launch into Black Desert. I'm prophesying over
maybe
this
that's
moment. Get into Black Desert.
That's your sixth job, Jeff, is Black Desert.
Actually, now that you described it that way, so let's say for us in the metaverse, deep, let's just say we're deep in Web3, deep in the metaverse. Those are all the same. But I think now when I hear you talking about it, it makes a really good point when you're communicating, let's say to the older generation, to the older church leadership. I think perhaps using the term gamer church as a distinctive could be helpful in maybe, like you said, bringing awareness, connecting them with the vision that there is people in their church ripe to start these ministries, and Minecraft, Roblox, Rec Room, all those types of things. So at first I was like, no, they're all the same. That doesn't make sense to me. But now I go, okay, I can see how at a communicative level for those that were not birthed in this, like you think of our current church leaders, with all respect, they were birthed from seminaries who were void of any of this topic. Like Jesus Gamers in the Church, I look at this title here, that was not a class that they took in seminary, right? It might be,
I guarantee,
in the near future. So they've either had to evolve or grow into it. So I think that language could be helpful, even though at first I was like, I don't know about that. So
yeah. I long for the day when church can just be church, and we don't have to call out physical, digital, micro, metaverse, gaming. When we're all accepted and we're all working towards a great commission, that will be a great day. Until then, we have to have these labels to educate. And so that's my hope through it. And so, hey, listen, this has been a great podcast. Pastor Koko, Pastor DJ Soto, the bishop of the metaverse. Thanks for jumping on this podcast and this live stream and joining in. We're going to be doing this next week, Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern. For the love of all that's within me, I cannot remember who's going to be on next week. You know what? I think we're digging into mental health and gaming in church. We're bringing in the American Association of Christian Counselors coming in, and we're talking about how to deal with neurodivergent issues in gaming and in Discord and in digital communities. And so really, we're digging into the deep end next week. It's going to be a great podcast, great stream. We're looking forward to being a part of it, but we're going to land the plane. For Pastor Koko, for Pastor DJ, my name is Jeff at theChurch.digital, Digital Church Network. Thanks for jumping on the stream here. Appreciate y'all. Y'all have a good day.